It's time to round out the weekend in Paul Ricard. Round 5 of the 2024 Euroformula Open Championship at Circuit Paul Ricard. It's the third and final race of the weekend. It's the second of our top 6 reverse grid races. 15 laps coming up, or 30 minutes, whichever we hit first. And conditions have vastly improved since we went racing earlier on. We were on slick tyres on a very wet track earlier. Now we are actually on a dry track. The storms that have been brewing through Le Castellet all day long seem to have finally cleared. Let's look back at what's happened so far. In race 1, Brad Benavides stalls from pole position. That let Jakob Bergmeister through into the lead and left the Floridian with a lot of work to do. Levente Revesh and Francesco Simonazzi side by side for second place through Lebuse, the Hungarian, putting on a fantastic move as Bergmeister established a lead up at the front of the field. Brad Benavides fought his way back through the order, putting a move on Simonazzi that also allowed Fernando Barrichello to come through as well. But Jakob Bergmeister took his first ever single-seater victory in race 1 after an untouchable performance. Race 2 was held in slick conditions. The race was declared wet right from the get-go. It was Pano Brajnik who led from reverse grid pole, with Benavides making the best of the starts, getting up into third position. But the conditions continued to decrease, with Benavides getting through into the lead on Levente Revesh through Lebuse, with Simonazzi in close proximity. And Benavides made up for the mistake he made at the start of race 1 with victory in race number 2. And he goes from 6th position in this one. So formation lap is underway for the third and final race of the weekend, and it is the Euroformula rookie Enzo Richet, the 18-year-old Frenchman, who starts on reverse grid pole position, with Fernando Barrichello alongside him on the front row of the grid, then Levente Revesh and Francesco Simonazzi on the second row of the grid. Jakob Bergmeister, race 1 race winner, and Brad Benavides, our pole sitter and race 2 winner, at the back of the field. No Paolo Brajnik in this one, unfortunately, so it is just the 6 cars. Chris Stevens and George Morgan in the commentary box. George, what pressure on young Enzo's shoulders here?
Well, a welcome debut weekend, Enzo Richet, and at a home race weekend to boot as well. I tell you what, things could be worse than starting on pole position, but no less this young man is going to take full, I'm sure, opportunity of this. But he has got quite a raft of experience in behind him, including Fernando Barrichello, who is very adept where it comes down to Brazilian F4 machinery alike. That's where he harboured his skills in single-seater. And then Levente Revesh, who took many off-track excursions during the wet weather that was plummeting down upon the circuit. Francesco Simonazzi expects him to have a lightning start and a lightning getaway to challenge the front leaders. Jakob Bergmeister looking to also seek another promising result after successfully consolidating a victory in race 1. Brad Benavides also extraordinarily good so far this weekend, again after achieving P3 after fighting back in our first race. He then went ahead to victory, achieving the most overtakes as well to boot on top of it, which granted him an additional 2 points in the championship. So who knows? It's going to be interesting. How is Enzo Richet going to handle himself being on top in front of a field such as this? It may be a small grid, but the racing is feisty.
I hope he's got the start procedure down this time. He had quite a sluggish getaway in his first start. It is quite a system to have to get used to in one of these cars. Obviously, drivers coming normally from lower powered machinery aren't quite used to preloading the clutch, and it is a proper carbon race clutch on these cars, unlike in other series. And so it does mean it's quite a complicated procedure to get them off the line. Of course, no clutch paddles behind the wheel. You only get that at the FIA F3 level and above, so it's still the foot clutch on there. We see Rubens Barrichello watching his boy go from the front row of the grid. So Barrichello just parks up there. On the left-hand side, we have the green flag at the back. The engine notes rise, and for the third and final time this weekend, we have the lights up, but not a great start by Richet. The best start being made by Levente Revesh. The Hungarian moves into the lead of the race, straight ahead of Fernando Barrichello. And I wonder if he was caught out there by the fourth light not actually coming on in the end, but it is Revesh leading Barrichello, leading Brad Benavides from 6th to 3rd in the first couple of corners. Simonazzi in behind, and then Bergmeister is 5th with Richet down in 6th.
A formality for what looks to be Levente Ravesh up at the front of the field. Barrichello getting off strongly as well, holds position in 2nd place. Simonazzi waiting in the wings. Brad Benavides though up to 3rd, exactly where he needs to be to challenge for yet another a second successive race win here this weekend. Unfortunate for Enzo Richet, now finds himself towards the tail end of the field looking to fight back, but part of this rookie contingent, and will look to try and clamber back up the order. But as they make their way down into the chicane, now wheel-to-wheel action. Here comes Jakob Bergmeister, who's going to go wheel-to-wheel here with Simonazzi. Could not quite find it, skidded over the curbs, heading through towards the first part of the chicane. Simonazzi maintains 4th place.
And of course, remember, Simonazzi did not take part in practice on Friday. He was sitting in an exam on Friday morning and then had to make the drive over to Le Castellet. His first laps were in qualifying, so he has been coming into this weekend considerably less prepared than his rivals, but top 3 really pulling away. Jakob's got to clear Francesco in a hurry if he wants to stick with these guys. There's currently 3/4 of a second that separate the top 3 as Benavides looks at the back of Barrichello going into turn number 12. So here a bit of a slide there from Simonazzi in 4th position, but it is the Hungarian Levente Ravesh still hunting for his first win of the season. He's been on the podium a few times already this season, 6 I think to be precise, yes, and he has won a race before at the end of last year, but he hasn't won one yet this season. So end of lap 1, Levente Ravesh leads by 0.8 of a second. Benavides half a second behind the Brazilian Barrichello, with Simonazzi and Bergmeister separated by only 0.3 of a second, as well, with Enzo Richet at the back of the field, heading up towards the Hotel chicane once again. And you see they're exploring how much grip there is on that bit on the left-hand side of the track and how much is still in the curbs, because there's probably still quite a bit of water in those curbs or in those painted runoff areas as well. Like we said, there has been an awful lot of stormy weather so far today. We saw it in race 2 earlier today. Complete contrast to what we saw yesterday, but this is actually the best conditions we've seen all day.
It certainly is, and it's not too hot either at the same time, even though we've got a little bit of patchy cloud in the sky. It is now a glistening blue colour as opposed to the appalling grey that we had before. But like I said, temperature not too bad as we see a car going off at the back. I think that might be Enzo Richet again towards the rear as Levente Ravesh applies his trade through Scene Corner. He's got Fernando Barrichello waiting in the wings, but Benavides is going to make the Brazilians' time a little bit tricky here in this initial stage of this race. Only 1 lap concluded as they make their way in the latter stages of the 2nd lap here. Oh, Barrichello getting a little bit rough over the curbs there indeed, capturing a little bit of elevation as he hobbled over the top of that curb. Again, Simonazzi whipping the tail out in his BVM Dallara 320 chassis, one of the few remaining races we have got with this model of Dallara. And very soon the 324 will be marking its debut appearance in 2025 at the start of next year's campaign. But as they bring an end to this lap now, they'll proceed onwards with 13 to go. Still Levente Ravesh out in front. Fernando Barrichello still very much in proximity. I must say, taking a lot of positives here from Barrichello's performance so far this weekend. And I know that some of the members of Motor Park have been certainly hammering home that this is certainly an upturn as far as Barrichello's concerned. Was fighting in amongst the rest of the field in races earlier on today, and currently sitting in that P2 spot. And stage like this, it'll be a podium finish as well for him once again, as now we see Brad Benavides getting in nice and tight. Bergmeister trying to join the rest of the field as well, still on the tail of Francesco Simonazzi. That has not changed, even despite Bergmeister's efforts to try and attack the Italian, heading through this very part of the circuit, venturing into the chicane. But still, Ravesh takes them through. Richet starting to get disconnected from those just in front of him.
Power of the slipstream on display, with Levente Ravesh in clean air doing 232 at the end of the straight. Benavides in the tow of Barrichello, 240 kph at the end of the straight. So getting 8 kilometers an hour there. Ravesh doing the fastest lap of the race though last time around, 1:57.110. The gap up to 1.1 now over Fernando Barrichello. And Jakob Bergmeister still hasn't cleared the back of Simonazzi. He seems to have regained his composure. The gap has stabilised, actually. Now, it was growing on the first lap, but now it's still hovering around 0.8 of a second. So Barrichello, we saw him come a little unstuck on the exit of Le Bousset earlier on, and he was doing so in race 1 as well. It's partly what helped Brad Benavides make his way through on the Brazilian in that race. He was recovering from the stall at the start. It was going to be a good birthday celebration, a good 23rd birthday celebration for Benavides when he put it on pole position, but was very disappointed with himself to make that mistake and limit himself to a 3rd place finish in race number 1. But a little bit of redemption for him this morning in race 2, which he was very happy to have.
Yeah, in conditions that were less than ideal as well, which says an awful lot. Obviously, it takes good drivers to succeed at the most treacherous of circumstances. But this time, with a clear track, no necessary wetness, indeed might be a few puddles here and there, but the driver's managing it well, and it looks like Revesh is now starting to apply his trade even further. It's 1.3 now, clear of Fernando Barrichello, who I think has now become more concerned with Brad Benavides waiting in the wings.
Yeah, if you weren't with us earlier, the track was declared wet straight away before the start of the race, but the cars stayed on slick tyres.
Very nearly became the new Olympic swimming pool, it has to be said. But
there was surviving out there on slick tyres. We had a few harem-scarum moments for sure, but everyone managed to survive. A few spins. Barrichello had a spin earlier on. I think Jakob Bergmeister ended up finishing behind him still, as well as Benavides looks to the outside of Scene corner and hurriedly trying to find his way through on the Brazilian. And this is a move that's worked for him a couple of times this weekend already on the inside of Le Bousset, and Brad Benavides very calmly, very smoothly, like a hot knife through butter, into 2nd position.
Worthy of a golf clap, that one. Smoothly does it. Brad Benavides up to 2nd place and dispatches Fernando Barrichello. Now full focus on Levente Revesh up at the top. Obviously, the time over the last lap was a 1:57.173 for Levente Revesh, but bear in mind, he does have the benefits of clear air. Let's take a look at that move again. Inside line for the Floridian. Brad Benavides executing it perfectly. Nothing that Barrichello could really do about that, and the momentum in the favour of the IAX livery. Of course, familiar bronze and green that we have seen adopted by Marcos Seibert and Diego Menchaca in the International GT Open. As we now watch as the rest of the cars plough their way through the first 2 corners. There's Bergmeister still chasing after Simonazzi as they break into the L'Hotel chicane. The BVM racing team would have been hoping, I think, for a better weekend. I mean, it hasn't necessarily been easy for them because, of course, Simonazzi, part of the championship contendership as well, trying to batter against Brad Benavides, and after a recent string of results that have constituted 2 race wins at Hungaroring with fastest laps to boot to go along with them, there was plenty of points going Francesco Simonazzi's way, but it seems to be at this particular round, obviously we've got to factor in the lack of a free practice session as well, of course, but still nonetheless hasn't necessarily been successful in terms of acquiring points. But we have got Red Bull Ring, Barcelona and Monza coming up, and I would say they are tracks that very much suit Simonazzi. And if we want to talk about Red Bull Ring, that was the location of where Simonazzi would take his first ever race win in this championship.
We saw some cracking battles there last year, but just to see Simonazzi having a bit of a swapper there in the middle of the Bousset by the looks of it, and Benavides did the fastest lap of the race last time around. He pulled 3/10 in on Levente Revesh's advantage. The gap 1.3 seconds he's been eking in on this lap. Both doing a personal best in the first sector. Benavides again a few hundredths quicker in the middle sector as well. So he is setting his sights on a 2nd victory of the weekend. Also, Levente Revesh still going for his first win of the season, having joined us midway through last year for the last 2 rounds of the season at Monza and Barcelona. He had podiums in that debut weekend at Monza, won race 2 in the Barcelona finale, as well, having come over from the Formula Regional European Championship. As did quite a few drivers last year. Many of them went on to the FIA F3 Championship. Of course, Charlie Wirtz and Josh Dufek made that switch mid-season as well. They ended up in Formula 3 along with Cian Shields and our champion from last year, Noel Leon, of course. Joining the likes of Ollie Goethe and Christian Mansell as recent graduates into the Formula 1 support bill.
Slight lock-up there from Levente Ravesh heading through, but building on your premise of past drivers, and of course, shall we say, role of honour here in the Euroformula Open, many drivers moving on to other championships such as the Formula 3 and Formula 2, and on the road to Formula 1. Also can take a look at the win stats as well as Bergmeister gets close to the back of Simonazzi, because like I said earlier on today, after the victory that Brad Benavides secured in race 2, puts him on 6 wins in his EFO career, and levels up with Vitor Baptista, who won the championship with 6 race wins back in 2015, which could yet be a good omen for Benavides in terms of him collecting the championship this year. And already, based on the fact that he has been a very successful talent behind the wheel of a Euroformula car, you certainly wouldn't put it past him at this point, and is actually etching ever closer to Levente Ravesh. That gap now started to come down, and like I said, it was a slight error on part of Ravesh coming through the midway point of the Mistral Straight at the chicane on entry, just running a little deep, and I think Brad Benavides is going to take every opportunity here at this stage. And as you can see from the sector times, based on the last lap alone, Benavides was faster, granted not by a lot, but he was still faster.
Gap down to 1.0. And those sector times are looking pretty even, though. Still, as Bergmeister still trying to find a way through on Simonazzi there. So flicking it through turn 7 and unleashing all 240 brake horsepower from the Spice engine. So Benavides continues to close the gap, and Fernando Barrichello locking up ever so slightly. Young FIFO still showing some really great speed. We can definitely see the development that you were talking about earlier, George, where he's been coming on strong, and this is just what Team Motorpark does. It turns good drivers into really good drivers, and sometimes even great ones.
Well, I mean, the prime example was Noel Leon last season. I mean,
such a different driver from start to end of the season.
If you compare the final round at Barcelona to the very first one at Portimao, you'd have a contrasting in performance, I would say, between the two, shall we say, drivers aside. But he's gone on to do great things in Formula 3 as well, following suit with the likes of Marino Sato and, of course, Cameron Das, who did not necessarily go on to that, but obviously Oliver Goethe as well. And you've got to factor in Felipe Drugovich, who for many times now he's been associated with the Formula 1 drive, but is part of the Aston Martin fold. And you know, these are the elements that are on the table here for some of these young talents that are coming through out of Formula 4 machinery, or even out of karts. If you're one Jakob Bergmeister, German shifter kart champion, and now a Euroformula race winner as of this weekend in our very first race of the weekend yesterday. It was a tremendous performance on part of Bergmeister, and what we would hope is that this will eventually convert into him using that as leverage to bring more wins to the table here, Chris.
Certainly could be. We know that young Jakob's got the speed and the talent to do so. Still struggling to find a way past Simonazzi though at this stage, but well, Benavides really with Ravesh now. He's going to be filling his mirrors with gold and green. 0.6 of a second separate them as they went through the chicane. We'll get another timing split here as they head towards Scene Corner. It's less than half a second now. Benavides soaking up that slipstream once again. He'll be used to running in the dirty air at this stage. And Ravesh has had his elbows out already this weekend.
Race 2 was a prominent
Yes,
illustration of that.
Yes, and that was when he was told to give up the position. So if he defends that hard when he has been told he needs to give it up, I don't want to see how he's going to defend when he doesn't have to give up the position.
No, I can't see him foregoing it one iota, but I'm sure that Brad Benavides is going to remind him of what occurred back in race 2. And a little twitch there from Brad Benavides, thinking about sending a message, maybe a warning shot to one Levente Revesh as they now streak down across the line. And you can see as well Fernando Barrichello just in the distance, still harbouring that P3, but Benavides getting closer and is in the slipstream of the Hungarian, who is now looking all over and trying to block the manoeuvre here as the Floridian looks for an outside line manoeuvre, just not quite enough alongside his fellow Motor Park teammate as he now cruise through towards the hotel chicane this time. Revesh in control. Benavides taking a wider line, moves onto the paint in order to maximise corner entry. You never know now coming through turns 5 and 6 if he can enforce a decent run. We saw the drivers opting for different lines in race 2 earlier on today, and even in the dry conditions they're looking for something a little different. Just try and counteract anything that your opponent makes as FIFO goes wide.
Yeah, a bit of a harem-scarum moment there for Barrichello. Gets away with it as they head down the Mistral once again, and Revesh a little jink to the inside. Brad Benavides a little jink to the outside for himself as well, but a lock-up though going into the Mistral chicane. Just runs a tad wide, does Benavides, gets away with it for the most part. They're heading back up the hill towards the flat-out right-hander of Scene corner. Revesh realises the attack is coming. Brad tries to hold it out around the outside, ended up getting some curb there, kicking up some water that's been sitting in that curbing. Trying around the outside this time of Lebusé, but still the Floridian has to hold in behind his teammate.
Revesh covered off that one very well indeed, sticking the car to the inside to prevent Benavides from having the run like he did earlier on Barrichello. But this time it did not work for Benavides, who has to wait in behind for his chance to come again. I'm sure it will. He's only 2 tenths away from Revesh up at the top, and the Hungarian, I'm sure, is going to still have to once again raise that shield. Of course, a first win of the season is at stake as far as the Hungarian's concerned, and a car running very wide, and that's Bergmeister, who is still pursuing Simonazzi, but perhaps just overcooking that trip around Pont just a little too much as they come through turn 1 again. Revesh over the timing line over the last lap, 1:59.0, over 2 tenths faster than Brad Benavides over the last lap, but obviously these two are squabbling, they are fighting. But look at Fernando Barrichello's time, just eking away at that gap, 1:58.994. He was the fastest driver over the last lap, and the only driver in the 1:58s.
So Benavides not as close to Revesh this time around. You can see the beautiful slow-mo shots and how close Benavides was, and the setting sun there, of course, probably some slightly darker visors being opted for in this race. We always do tend to get like one late day race with Euroformula, trying to pack 3 races into one weekend.
Well, it's been a long time since we've only had 2. Of course, it
was pre-2020, wasn't it?
It was 2020. Lucas Dunner and Yi Fei took pole in both of those, and eventually Lucas Dunner and Yi Fei would go on to win as well in the subsequent races after that. So, of course,
there was races that year as well where they trying to make up rounds, so they had 3 or 4 races even at some point.
Absolutely. Well, now, obviously, since 2021, they've moved to the 3-race format, as we now watch, as Levente Revesh still controls the pace out in front, half a second.
I love the 3-race format.
It's
well.
fantastic. Well, the reverse grids. The reverse grids.
It just makes for a good time, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. And it gives us moments like this, where, of course, you find Brad Benavides trying to, obviously, being championship leader. You'd expect him to perform. Credit here to Fernando Barrichello, still working to get closer and has not at all detached from the front 2. So you could not factor him out of this in particular. Great confidence on display from the Brazilian, as we now see that gap reduced once more to within 4.5 tenths of a second between Revesh and Benavides. Revesh forced to go slightly more defensive, Benavides more aggressive with the use of curbing on the left-hand side. ahead of entry, coming through Le Hotel chicane, then through towards the double right-handers through turns 5 and 6 before they then pirouette through turn 7 and down the long straight at Mistral before they venture through towards the chicane. There's Barrichello, who, thanks to the, I would say, the contributing battle between Simonazzi and Bergmeister, has managed to draw significantly clear of them. Now 4.8 between Barrichello and Simonazzi as Benavides getting very close again, coming into the chicane once more.
1.5 seconds covers the top 3. Still Bergmeister and Simonazzi going toe-to-toe over 4th position. They've cleared some 6 seconds to Enzo Richer, who continues to find speed in his first Euroformula weekend. But Benavides, the gap that was expanding a couple of laps ago has shrunk right back down again. And yeah, Fernando looks much closer now, doesn't he, to Brad? That was 1.5 seconds a few corners ago, but it looks way less than that now.
Yeah, he very nearly hit the 4/10 mark. He's actually just over 0.3 of a second faster over the last lap. It was a 1:58.582 for Barrichello in the last lap, and it started, there you can see it from the graphic at the bottom, just over 0.3, as I said, in the last lap, and it's done so over the last 3 laps as well, convincingly nipping away at that delta. And I'll be interested to see how it looks. And it's broken to within 8.5 of a second now. So Barrichello is not out of the question here for a first race win of the season, you know, as things go, because of course Levente Revesh has been more concerned about defending too. So a 2-car scrap once again can become a 3-car scrap. So all eyes with 4 laps left in this race. Could be a slight twist of the tail here in a battle over the podium places.
So 3 and a bit laps to go. And it's looking likely that these 3 will be on the podium. In what order, though, that is still to be...
Huge question mark.
Yes, that is still to be disputed as they head back towards the Mistral chicane once again. Fairly equidistant. Actually, Barrichello's closer to Benavides, and Benavides is to Revesh. And, of course, if he does see those 2 start squabbling, as Bergmeister goes down the inside, locks up, can't get it stopped.
A little bit too hot.
Has to go through the chicane, and now surely he will have to give that place back to Simonazzi because he gained the place by cutting through the chicane.
Indeed he does.
I think he is giving that place back. Is he?
Maybe just allowing it, but at the same time not forfeiting too much.
Trying to do it while losing as little time as possible.
Saw a little bit of that earlier on in the weekend, but yes, over the first sector, it was Revesh who was actually faster in the first sector, and this time, though, it's a response from Brad Benavides, who then goes faster than the other 2 in the second sector. Here's the move again. Benavides, I think, just getting in a little bit keen to turns 7, 8, and 9, and as a consequence, having to forego the place back to Francesco Simonazzi. We'll see that resume as they cross the timing line once again. There's the Italian stallion in the distance. The gap still the same as they were coming out of the second sector over the last lap. Revesh holding firm with a gap that's just beyond 6.5 ahead of Benavides. Barrichello on the cusp of the second once more. But over the last lap, Revesh looking immensely strong. But it looks like Benavides has resumed business as usual, as the gap looks to extend between Ps2 and 3.
It's just so fascinating watching how they manage the tyre wear, which I think is what we're seeing here, about when they choose to attack and when they choose to conserve the tyres for a little bit, and that's why we're seeing the gaps ebb and flow, because suddenly Benavides isn't under any pressure at all from Barrichello, really. It's 1.1 seconds that he's just pulled over the Brazilian, and is suddenly looking much more comfortable under the rear wing of Levente Revesh. And tyre management is key here. A lot of long, high lateral load corners that will chew up the left side tyres in particular, which do take a hammering around here with fast corners like turn 5 and 6, the Stebon and Scene corner, and of course here at Le Bousset as well.
giant chess game being played out here. And as we alluded to, or as you alluded to, Chris, with regards to the tyre wear, no doubt Brad Benavides looking for the right moment to announce checkmate on Levente Revesh. As time goes on, we're coming into that fragile stage where with 3 laps to go, Benavides is going to shout go and try and challenge the Hungarian for the race lead. And it could come as soon as now. Certainly get the feeling that as far as Brad Benavides is concerned, the end is not near, the end is here. With 3 laps remaining, it'll then turn to 2, and they'll come down towards turn 1 yet again. Penultimate lap of the race. Benavides now started to cook up a storm here as the gap becomes narrower and narrower once more. Over the last lap, he was 2/10 faster of the realm than Levente Revesh. Barrichello was also faster than both of them and creeping into this fight again as well, so do not write him off. He's getting closer to the back of Benavides' car. Revesh, despite holding the lead, he might see it ebb and flow away because Brad Benavides is on the attack, and I think Revesh knows it.
Still only 1.4 seconds that covers the top 3. Revesh finding an answer to Benavides' speed. Lap and a half remaining. That's all that separates Levente Revesh and his first victory of the season in the Euroformula Open Championship, his second since joining the series at the end of last year. Back up towards Scene Corner, then rise uphill. And of course for Fernando Barrichello, could be a second podium finish as well for the Brazilian, adding on to the 3rd place finish he had in race 3 in Budapest a few weeks ago, of course. And again, the gap ebbs and flows because now Barrichello looks like the most aggressive of the 3 as they just choose their moments when to deploy, like a game of poker and a game of chess all rolled into one.
Certainly
and
is.
A game of chess, a game of poker on a Rubik's Cube wrapped up in an enigma.
That has the ability to cultivate 3 players in a game.
Yes.
Unbelievable. But the 3 players of that game are now taking the final lap of the race. And it's Levente Revesh who takes them through the first sector as we bring an end to the Paul Ricard weekend. But the question is, who's going to be victorious in the final race of the day, in the final race of this Le Castellet fight? The scramble ongoing between Jakob Bergmeister and Francesco Simonazzi, but as we rejoin the front, Levente Revesh harbouring and holding all the cards right now, but for how much longer? Until Benavides pulls out a running flush and perhaps even takes the lead of this race, furthermore stamping his authority on this championship. But even so, even if he was to finish second, it would be his 3rd consecutive complete podium weekend, which would be a truly amazing feat once more, as now he gets closer to Levente Revesh coming into the Mistral chicane once more here at Paul Ricard as they zip on through. No mistakes there from Revesh. Barrichello coming on through as well. Still Simonazzi holding firm in 4th spot. But as far as Levente Revesh is concerned, and he's going to say it now to Brad Benavides, you shall not pass.
Well, you say that, George. You say that, but heading into Le Bousset, Benavides has got to run. Not many overtaking opportunities left on this lap. We've only got a few corners to go, and Revesh is still very preoccupied with the car in his mirrors. The championship leader, Brad Benavides, surely if he gets it out of here, unless it's an absolute dive bomb at Virage du Port, Levente Revesh should score his first victory of the season. I don't think Benavides is close enough. Sure, I'll leave it to the last possible second. It will be Levente Revesh for the first time this season. As he comes out of Virage du Port, he's held on brilliantly under pressure, and Levente Revesh wins for the first time this season in race number 3 in round 5 at Paul Ricard. Brad Benavides settles for 2nd place, and Fernando Barrichello on the podium for the 2nd time this year. Francesco Simonazzi in 4th, Bergmeister 5th, Enzo Richer will come home in 6th position, and that is a long-awaited victory for Levente Revesh.
It's taken a while to get here. In total, I must say, 16 races it took. We've now arrived here, and he's on top. Take us through it, Chris.
And Levente Revesh, for the first time this season, on top, ahead of Brad Benavides, is completing another successful weekend with a string of podium finishes. Fernando Barrichello joins them on the podium, ahead of Simonazzi, Bergmeister and Richet. Benavides continues to stretch his championship lead, now 91 points clear of Francesco Simonazzi, with Levente Revesh ahead of Jakob Bergmeister now by 6 points for third in the championship. Fernando Barrichello in fifth in the standings.
Well, there we have it. That closes out the weekend here at Paul Ricard in the Euroformula Open. Fantastic fight on part of Brad Benavides and Levente Revesh, but Revesh doing enough to withstand the pressure. There was plenty of it as well. And Brad Benavides didn't go away totally empty-handed. Of course, P2 is a great result, but also on top of that, securing the fastest lap, and dare I say, most overtakes in this race as well.
And it's the bonus points that really does make quite a bit of difference in there. You get the bonus points for fastest lap, for overtakes, for pole position as well. These are little things, they really do add up. It's not just the points that you score for your actual race result. These are important numbers that add up very quickly, and of course have contributed to building that 91-point lead now for Benavides in the championship.
It's back-to-back weekends where he's been on the first, second and third spot on the podium. So if you're counting numbers, that's certainly an interesting one. But I'm sure he's more interested to note that he's only been outside of the podium places once throughout the entire of his season so far, which was back at Hockenheim in race 3.
I think third weekend as well, we've had 3 different winners across 3 different races in a weekend. Of course, Jakob Bergmeister, Brad Benavides, Levente Revesh as well. We saw that in Hockenheim as well with
Lorenzo Flusha.
That was in Portimao. Yes.
Oh, apologies.
With
Portimao.
Simonazzi and Benavides, and then with Michael Shin in Hockenheim as well as Benavides and Simonazzi. So here comes Levente Revesh pulling up into P1 for the first time this season. I think we've had 2 breakthrough wins this weekend, George. First with Jakob Bergmeister taking his first ever single-seater win on Saturday. And now Levente Revesh with his first win of the season. Only his second in the Euroformula Open Championship.
That will feel like a bit of a reprieve on his part, I'm sure.
See the helmet of the Hungarian flag colours there. And that is fantastic. You see what it means to his crew.
I said earlier he was going to take 16 races, actually 15 races it took, but he got there in the end. That's what's important.
I hope they don't get too heavily fined for going through the barriers there. Rubens Barrichello there, congratulating Kai, his engineer, there as well. Congratulating Fernando on another podium.
That, for me, was a standout performance on part of Fernando Barrichello. I think in terms of what we've seen from him so far this season, okay, he's matched the P3 that he obtained back at Hungaroring, also in race 3. But I felt that was a far more true-to-form performance on part of Fernando Barrichello. And this is what Kai was on about when I spoke to him in the paddock the other day. He said that there was more to come from Barrichello.
And speaking of Kai, apologies again for his language. He has a habit of this. Clearly no one's told him that he was caught on.
He got you good at Portimao.
He did. That was Barcelona at the end of last year, wasn't it?
Barcelona as well.
With Noel in the car.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it became a bit of a meme because of that. But yes, a very happy podium, it seems like, there with Fernando and Levente, of course. No, I see what you mean about Fernando Barrichello. His second podium in as many weekends in the Euroformula Open Championship. What can he do for the rest of the season? Brad Benavides from 6th to 2nd. Just missing out on victory in the end was the Floridian, but he extends his championship lead. Levente Revesh, our race winner, is with Alfredo.
And we are with the winner of race 3 at Paul Ricard, Levente Revesh. At last, after all the bad luck you had in previous rounds, this time everything went well.
Yeah, well, everything went well. Compared to it was mixed conditions, so yeah, I think I had a good start, and after I managed to keep the position, and yeah, everything went fine.
And track conditions were better in this last race.
Better than the race too. Yeah, of course, sure.
It's your second win in the Euroformula after the one last year. Was it in Barcelona?
Yes, it was in Barcelona. Yeah.
So happy?
Yes, I'm really happy. Yeah.
And what's next? More wins in the rest of the season?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Good. Well done. For the time being, enjoy the moment.
Thank you.
Keeps his cards close to his chest, doesn't he? Right, let's go back and see what happened. It was Enzo Richer who got a slow start from reverse grid pole. Levente Revesh went straight into the lead of the race ahead of Fernando Barrichello. That ended up being quite a crucial moment as Brad Benavides slotted into third position from sixth on the grid. That very much set up the duel we had throughout the entire race as the Hungarian led Barrichello and Benavides down into the hotel chicane for the first time of asking. Simonazzi and Bergmeister ended up fighting. And here is the move that Brad Benavides put on Barrichello for second position into Le Bousset. He said after Levente Revesh piled on as much pressure as he could, but he couldn't crack the Hungarian. And he took his first victory of the season in the Euroformula Open Championship. Potentially a breakthrough result, and a very happy Levente Revesh and his thoroughly happy for him crew as well. Celebrating down in Parc Fermé, joined on the podium by Brad Benavides and Fernando Barrichello. And we now go to the podium now with Barrichello, his second appearance where he doesn't stand on the little rookie step. He actually stands on the podium proper.
But he gets to come away with 2 trophies as well,
yes,
to go along with it. So that's a third place overall and a first place in the rookie battle. Of course, Enzo Richer, the other driver, as part of the rookie conglomerate. But we do have Benavides on the second step, not only walking away with second place, but also most overtakes and fastest lap in that final one. So quite an abundance of points going his way. But Levente Revesh will be no doubt delighted with that. And I think we heard how delighted he was in the interview as well. Obviously looking ahead to Red Bull Ring, where no doubt he'll look to make it 2 this season and 3 in his career. But 2's not bad, Chris.
It's not bad at all. And of course, we've still got 3 more rounds where he can add to it. But for now, we will have the podium and hear the Hungarian national anthem. What a result for Levente Revesh. The third place trophy going to Fernando Barrichello. A trophy that he is very, very proud of. That second time this season he's been on that third step of the podium. Brad Benavides, third podium of the weekend, and extending his championship lead. That's what I call a good day in the office. Levente Revesh on the top step.
Hard to believe, actually. It's Brad Benavides' only his second pole position at Paul Ricard this weekend,
yes,
which I find absolutely mind-blowing. But it has been shared about through the course of this campaign in amongst Francesco Simonazzi, who went ahead and took it at Portimao, as well as Spa, So we have seen it move around in many ways, and we also can't forget the exploits of other drivers such as Michael Shin, who went ahead and took pole at Hungaroring.
Well, that's the end of the action from Circuit Paul Ricard. The Euroformula Open Championship returns after the summer break at the Red Bull Ring. The Styrian Mountains await on the 14th of September.